Hi guys, my name is Trinity, and if you're here to talk about books. Today we're going to be talking about, is Adult Fairyloot worth it? You guys might have seen my previous video, is Book of the Month worth it? These are the two subscription boxes that I currently have. I had Owlcrate and I have done Is Owlcrate Worth It? I'll link the two videos down below. I have since gotten rid of my Owlcrate, which is neither here nor there. We are talking about Adult Fairyloot today. Now, one thing, if you guys can see the shelf behind me, you'll notice the outward facing like sprayed edges are Adult Fairyloot books. So we're going to go through all of the Adult Fairyloot books that have been sent, what I have read, my thoughts on them, and what I still have yet to read and what I'm excited for. Let's do this. Let's start this video by saying what needs to be said. There was the initial few books that everyone was pretty ticked off about. Now, I'm not going to say that they were bad. I'm not going to say that they weren't worth it or anything like that. But what Fairyloot did was gave a debut slot, because they promised adult debut authors at first. These were all young adult authors debuting their adult book. They weren't debut authors. They were prolific young adult authors. And it showed. It showed. So the initial few books, I think everyone was pretty ticked off about, just for that reason alone. Now, I have a list of all of the books. However, they are not in month order, so I'm just going to have to go based off of the list that I have and talk about the books in order that they have them listed. But I will mention the authors that I had just talked about. They were young adult authors emerging into the adult scene, not necessarily debut authors. They have since got away from looking for debut authors and are looking for the bigger fantasy releases now, which is great. So I'm very excited about that. And I will say, most of the books that I've got, I've been very excited for. They were already on like my wish list. I already wanted them. And they were authors I was excited to read from. There were a couple that I was very iffy about when I first got them. There's one coming that I'm very iffy about, but we'll get to that when we get there. Okay, I have to address this because I've already talked about it once, but we're talking about Adult Fairyloot. I have to talk about this. I did end up getting rid of my copy of Babel. I said I was going to read it, but guys, this book had zero appeal for me. Zero appeal. And the reason for that is I don't like dark academia. Not my thing. Not a huge fan of a school setting. I do have a few that I do like that have like an academic feel to them, Nevernight being one of them. Like we have the whole assassin training thing. But it's rare that that setting appeals to me. Now, I'm a Harry Potter girl. Sorry to say it. I love the books, love the movies. But the academia thing just doesn't appeal to me unless it's that. Or Name of the Wind. I do like Name of the Wind. But it's just not that appealing to me. And then I read The Poppy War and Ren. I didn't like Ren. And I've heard that Babel is very different, but it's also very slow paced, not appealing to me. There's just everything about this book is not something that appeals to me personally. And I just, one of my friends really wanted that copy of that book, and I felt very selfish for holding on to it and telling myself I was going to read it, knowing I wasn't even going to like it. So I gave it to her. I sent it to her and said, here, you can have it. But Babel was a huge release, Everyone was so excited for it. And, you know, I think, again, mass appeal. There was mass appeal to Babel. I just happened to be one of the people that it was not for, so I had no problem sending it to my friend. Now, the next one on the list is The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy, the book that launched a mission for me. So I have been on a mission to find a good fantasy book with a good fantasy plot and a good romance plot to go with it. This is the book. This is one of the books that launched this mission. So this and A Strange and Stubborn Endurance, they both set me on a mission to find more. I need more. I need ones that have great fantasy plot and a great romance just thrown together, jumbled all together, and it's great. That was very repetitive and I apologize, but you get my meaning. You get my meaning. And Emily Wilde is also on this list. The Encyclopedia of Fairies, or Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I just read this and it fits that same bill. I enjoyed both of these books so much, so much. I can say there is not universal appeal in fantasy romance. There's just not. But I do think that as far as like Fairyloot's previous subscribers, they are going to be on board with these books. And I think that if you like fantasy romance, you should sign up for Adult Fairyloot, because I've had two great ones. And then I know Hannah Whitten is another one. Foxglove King is on this list. And I think that's going to fit the bill as well. I haven't read that one yet, but I do think it's going to fit the same fantasy romance with a great fantasy plot and a great romance. So those I can clump together and say, if that appeals to you, you should be subscribing to Adult Fairyloot. You definitely should. So the upcoming book we have all learned is In the Lives of Puppets by T.J. Klune. Now, I have recently, in reading Emily Wilde, figured out that cozy's not a bad thing to me. It's not a bad thing. It does make me want to read Legends and Lattes. It really does. But I have written off T.J. Klune previous to making this video because I just finished Emily Wilde like last night. I do think I might give this one a try. A House in the Cerulean Sea doesn't appeal to me, but this one does sound pretty dang good, and it is a very highly anticipated fantasy release. So I do think, again, mass appeal. Now we're going to get into the ones that people were a little bit ticked off about, having them have adult debuts in the Fairyloot box, because we all know these authors. We've read from these authors before. These are the authors we grew up with. You can't tell us that these are adult debut authors, having read from them for years. The first one of those being The City of Dusk by Tara Sim. Tara Sim is a YA author. However, City of Dusk was pretty dang good. I really enjoyed it. And you can tell that they're used to writing younger characters, and these characters are younger characters. It does have a little bit of YA flavor throughout. Like, you get a little bit of the tropes that are typical of YA. You do get young characters, like I said, and there is some banter that's a little bit on the childish side, but I do think that this would appeal to most adult fantasy readers. If you're used to reading the new adult or the older YA, I think this would definitely appeal. Definitely appeal. Now, Adrienne Young, Spells for Forgetting. I actually enjoyed this. It was one of those that I found to be highly engaging, highly entertaining. Was it great? It wasn't my style. Like, I'm not big on the whole gothic thriller. I've come to find I do like gothic, but like the whole gothic thriller thing just isn't all that appealing to me. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed my time with it. It wasn't anything that I would, you know, be mad about. I did end up giving this book again to my niece because she has different tastes than me, but I do think this book would appeal to her highly. So it wasn't a waste at all. And the sore thumb would be Book of Night by Holly Black. Now, I did talk about this in my Book of the Month video because I had read it, so I marked it as read on Book of the Month as well, but I got it from Adult Fairyloot. And I can say I thought that, again, this was typical of Holly Black's writing style, typical characters. So if you're used to reading Holly Black, this was just more of the same. So I didn't think it was anything great, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed The Cruel Prince, that trilogy. So, and I read one of her other ones. I don't remember what it was. Tithe, I think. But I've read Holly Black before. I knew what to expect going into this. Did it feel like an adult book? No, it didn't. It didn't. So I can say that there is some validation to the people who were a little ticked off that the YA authors were getting their adult debut in the Fairyloot boxes. Again, Veronica Roth has been in it. Poster Girl. I haven't read that one yet. It's back there, the one that's blue. So I can't speak to that one, but again, it is a very prolific YA author who is getting an adult debut in the Adult Fairyloot box. Her Majesty's Royal Coven. I have been dying to read this and I don't know why I don't pick it up. This thing is bright yellow. It's down at the end. The pages are facing you, so it's black, but it's bright yellow. How do you miss it? I want to read it. It's on my 23 books I want to read in 2023. So I'll get to it. I will get to it. But I am excited for this one. I am pretty excited for it. Now, A Dowry of Blood was one of my favorite books of last year. I read it previous to receiving the Adult Fairyloot because I read the self-pub version. I mean, it was just before we got the one in Fairyloot, and I did not know that was going to be the Adult Fairyloot book. But I really enjoyed that. Roshani Chachki. She was another young adult author getting adult debut, but I loved this one. I loved this one, but I'm a huge fan of Gothic, huge fan of that writing style. Oh, my dog just sneezed. A huge fan of that writing style, a huge fan of the way those stories are told, a huge fan of the settings. So it just appealed to me in every way, and I adored it. Now, The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi. That was the most stunning book we have received from Adult Fairyloot since they've had it, since it's been an inception. Haven't read it yet though. Haven't read it yet though, so I can't give you like a determining factor. Is it great? And then we know The Curse of the Saints is going to be one of the upcoming books as well. Haven't read that obviously because it hasn't released yet. And then there was one book that I just didn't like, and that would be the Atlas 6. This is a very divisive book. There's a lot of people who gave it 5 stars. There's a lot of people who gave it 1 star. Very divisive. So I think part of why I didn't like it is because it jumped characters so often. There are 7 different POVs in a very, very short novel. And I just couldn't latch on to any of them. Didn't care. Didn't care about their plight. Didn't care who got sent home or died or whatever the stakes were, because I don't even remember that. But I did not like the Atlas 6. So as far as what I've read, I've enjoyed pretty much everything I've got from Adult Fairyloot. Aside from Babel being just not my taste at all, and then the Atlas 6 being one I DNF'd, I've enjoyed them. I do think they appeal more to female readers. I do think they appeal more to fantasy romance readers than they do to anybody else. So if fantasy romance is something that you enjoy, why don't you have Adult Fairyloot? That's my question. But if fantasy romance is something you are unsure about or want to try, I do also think it's a good option for that, because they do pick pretty dang good books. Like I said, there's only been one I haven't liked and one that just wasn't to my taste. I do have a few left to read. Poster Girl, In the Lives of Puppets, and that hasn't come yet. But I'm still very excited for Her Majesty's Royal Coven, which is one I haven't read, and I will eventually read Poster Girl. Can't say I'm excited for it because Veronica Roth is not my favorite author, and dystopian is not my favorite type of book. I mean, I do like it, but I don't know. I don't know if I need another dystopian from Veronica Roth. We'll see. We'll see. But if any of that appeals to you, I would say that Fairyloot has definitely been worth it for me. And if you like the same things that I do, it could definitely be worth it for you. If you don't like fantasy romance, I would highly, highly suggest not purchasing Adult Fairyloot, because most of these have had a romantic quality to them. And I have been wanting to try more subscription boxes, but these are the 2 that I have right now. So I am glad that I could give you some insight into both of these. And I hope that it helped you make a decision whether or not to purchase it yourself. That's it for me today. Like, subscribe, do all the fun things, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!